Hi, my name is Londa Nwadike, and I'm a State Extension Food Safety Specialist for both Kansas State University and the University of Missouri Extension. So I'm housed in the Kansas City area and work with our Extension personnel all across both states in the areas of food safety, but then also I do work in kind of related areas of food systems and food access and those sort of issues as well. So I think farm to school is a great topic and a wonderful thing for people to work on. I'll just start personally. I grew up on a farm in South Dakota, and I have 3 kids in school now, and I really love it when they can know where their food is coming from as much as possible. And when my school taxpayer dollars are going to help support local farmers, I think is wonderful. And if our kids can be eating local foods, I think is great. If you're a farmer that's wanting to sell to schools, you always have to make sure that you're meeting whatever governmental regulations are in place, first of all. And so it's a regulatory requirement that all food that is sold is safe and that it's unadulterated. So the issue is always what specifically safe means, because the definition depends on the type of food product that you are interested in selling. So you have to make sure that you're meeting whatever regulations are in place. And then on top of that, schools might have their own marketplace requirements or their own buyer requirements. So they might have additional requirements to what the regulations are. So you always have to meet those regulations at a minimum, and then you always have to check with the school to see what their requirements might be. So it depends on what type of products you're selling. Regulations are different based on each product. So, for example, fruits and vegetables, I'll start with that because, I think that's a great one to be selling to local schools. However, regulations for selling local produce is such that if you're selling less than $25,000 per year, then you're exempt from federal regulations for fresh whole produce. If you are, and then there's also what we call the local foods exemption. So if you're selling, there's a combination of things. It's if you're selling more than $500,000 worth of food products and most of your products are going direct to the consumer, which school cafeteria would not be included in that. So, but again, if you're selling less than $25,000 of produce per year, you would be exempt from the regulations. So if you're not exempt, then you would be covered by what's called the Food Safety Modernization Act Produce Safety Rule. And we can help you. That's what Extension is here for. We can definitely help you to be able to make sure that you're meeting those requirements. You don't have to apply for any licenses or anything like that. It's just you have to meet the requirements if there ever was an inspection of your farm. So that's for fresh whole produce in terms of the regulatory side. Then, if it's things like basically most everything else that you're selling would require some sort of licensing. So if you're selling any sort of a processed product, like any sort of a chopped or cut vegetable, you would definitely want to check with your inspector to see, or check with the school to see what they would want in terms of regulatory compliance. If you're selling milk products, or if you're selling meat or, breads or things like that, that would be considered a business-to-business sale. So it would be something that you would need to have a food establishment license, or the proper meat licensing, or the proper dairy licensing. There's those would all be regulated by Kansas Department of Agriculture on the Kansas side. So, and then in addition, some schools might have again, they might have their own requirements. Some schools might say, okay, if I'm going to buy produce from you, I want it to be GAP certified, which is separate from the regulatory requirements. So it's something that's like an additional requirement that the school might have. So you just always have to visit with your school to see what the requirements are. And again, GAP certification is something we do have. There's GAP's cost share funds available, and we can help producers that want to get GAP certified if you're selling fresh whole produce, so we can help with that as well. So, you always make sure you want to check with the school what their requirements are. And if you have questions, feel free to ask our K-State Research and Extension food safety group, and we can try to help answer those questions as well. We do have one publication in K-State Research and Extension that talks about selling produce. So it's the regulations for selling any type of produce. So whether you're wanting to sell it to a school or any other entity, direct to consumer and so on, there is information in that publication about selling produce to any entity, including things like to another business, to a school. It's available on our K-State Extension website. I don't remember the publication number at the moment, but it is something that's available on our K-State Extension website. And we do have a number of other publications. We have one publication in particular that's geared for selling direct to consumer, but it does have information in there about other regulations as well. So that can kind of give you a good starting point. And that publication has a number of links to other publications as well that can help you to find the information that you might need about, to help you find more information about regulations. So. So I'll just say, as a personal example, the school district that my kids happen to go to is Gardner-Edgerton, USD 231. And I am really happy with our farm to school work that our particular local food service director does. And I know that she really does work hard to try to buy local produce in particular as much as she can, which I think is great. And I know I hear a lot of other examples across the state as well of schools that are really working hard to try to buy more of their food locally and really try to help support the local community and help provide good education and good nutrition to our kids as well. So I know that there's definitely a lot of energy and interest behind this, and just trying to help support local farmers, but then also just to help our kids understand more about where their food is coming from and where more about agriculture, I think, is a wonderful thing. So. Great. So if you are a school that's interested in buying local foods from your local farmers, again, it's a wonderful thing. I think it's a great idea. School food service authorities always have to make sure that they're buying foods from what's called a reputable supplier. And the reputable supplier must use food safe practices. And so the thing is that those terms are sometimes hard to define exactly because it depends on if it's produce or if it's meat or if it's milk, or what sort of food it is that determines whether what are the safe food practices for that particular type of food. So we don't necessarily have it's not always set exactly what a reputable supplier means and exactly what food safe practices means, but you as a school food service program have to obviously have to make sure that you are providing safe food for the students that are in your district. So each school should, take it upon themselves to make sure that the food is, first of all, meeting all regulations, governmental regulations, but then, the school can do what they feel like is prudent to make sure that the food is safe as possible. So in terms of, I do want to mention in terms of in terms of insurance and liability, the farms aren't necessarily required to have liability insurance, but you as a school might decide to include that, which that the farm has to have some sort of product liability insurance, and that's again up to the school how they want to handle that. And some farmers do have product liability insurance, and some might not. So it just depends on the situation. But that can be a good idea to help mitigate some of the risks. So as a school, there's different things that you can do to help to reduce your risk. And one thing that is important is making sure that you're keeping good records of where your food is coming from, and then to know where you're getting the produce from, and then when you're produce or food, I should say, and then when and where you're serving that food, just to have records, in case there's ever a problem, that you can trace back, one step back where the food came from, and then one step to where it's going as well, is something important that schools can do also. There's great on-farm checklists that are available from different sources, such as other extension services across the U.S. that schools can go to the farm and see what they're doing at that farm to make sure that they're doing things using those good food safe practices, and they're a reputable supplier, like we talked about as well. If you're a school and you're buying in products from a local farmer, you always want to make sure you're inspecting your incoming products anyway. So whatever products are coming in, you do want to just make sure that you're inspecting them and making sure that you are handling those products as safely as possible. One other thing I'll mention that's a related topic is school gardens, and school gardens are a great thing to have. And we have a publication actually from K-State Research and Extension that talks specifically about food safety for school gardens, and making sure that you are doing things as safely as possible, and in a way that will ensure that the food that's consumed is going to be safe, and will be a good experience for the kids as well. So that publication, the number is MF3152. It's available on our K-State Extension website if you're interested in that.